Hello, this is a video from Healing Water Sanctuary, and today I've got the lovely Estelle Gillingham, who's a forensic healer at Healing Waters here, and we're here to tell you about an experience recently with our Healing Birth Wounds workshop, which Estelle attended. So are you up for telling us what happened on your workshop?
Very much so, yes.
So yes, how was it for you? What was the workshop like? What was the experience like of attending the workshop?
Well, for me it was a little bit different to usual because I'm used to working as an individual, and one of the things I had forgotten as a consequence of that was the power of group work. Very, very touching to see so many brilliant people, how they had struggled to overcome what turned out, as their stories evolved, to be, some of them, different aspects of my early years and pre-birth and birth story. So it was, on one level, very, very validating. I couldn't deny that the experiences that I had also struggled with were real, but also to see the calibre of person there and to see how they had fought to try and overcome these difficulties made you feel incredibly compassionate for them. And because, as I said, they were mirroring so many aspects of what had happened in my life, by the end of the weekend I even felt some compassion for me.
Well, compassion is a really important thing. Often when I'm working with people with trauma, one of the biggest things for them is compassion for the self. It's very easy when you've been through really difficult circumstances to be really, really hard on yourself, to feel that somehow you're to blame. So I just want to say, for anyone listening to this video that hasn't heard about the Healing Birth Wounds workshop, that actually, although it's got the title Healing Birth Wounds, actually it's about prenatal work, prenatal being right from preconception. So it's about what happened to you when you were an egg or when you were a sperm. As incredible as it seems, we can actually have access to. Did you find that? Did you?
Totally.
Yeah. So we can go right the way back to when we were an egg or a sperm, or at the point of conception, what was happening at the point of conception that may have been really powerful or difficult, that may then have set down a pattern for you for the rest of your life.
That's it. Yeah.
And not only conception, but implantation at the point of, as a tiny little blastocyst implanting into the mother's womb, or how your mother felt about finding out you were there, whether she was ready for pregnancy, and the whole emotional environment of the mother that affected you as an embryo whilst you were growing in the womb. So all those things are pre-birth experiences, prenatal experiences, right up then through to birth, and how it was for you at the birth, what affected you at the birth. And each of those points, if it was a very intense or difficult time, they lay down psychological and emotional patterns that then run through the rest of your life. Did you know, what was the most surprising thing for you that came out of the workshop?
Just what you were touching on there, probably. The fact that, well, there were two surprising things. One was the power of being with other women who, because the workshop, the whole atmosphere, the way it's designed, and the way each participant gets to design their own bespoke healing process, so that they're totally supported by everybody else who's taking part, it made me realise how, for people who haven't had enough of that reassurance and being made to feel very, very supported and physically safe in their early years in the world, if you can then have an experience of that at any stage later in life, and I certainly had that experience within the workshop, but particularly I think for me with other women, another opportunity for a huge amount of healing to take place.
Safety is a huge thing in trauma, because
Yeah.
trauma is something that overwhelms our whole system and gives us a sense that we're going to die imminently. And so in the healing of trauma, safety is one of the fundamental points to support the healing. And just to say that although that was a women's only workshop, that was quite remarkable that there were 6 women attending, but they are mixed groups.
Seven or 8 even.
Oh yes, there were 7,
Yeah,
that's right, yes.
Yeah.
But it's also a workshop for men, so don't be put off thinking it's men only, women only. It's for whoever in that moment spirit is bringing to the workshop. So So Estelle, what was the effect for you that came out of that prenatal accessing those prenatal patterns?
I think the other aspect, it seems a little bit more difficult to explain. It's more subtle, but for me, a chance to reframe experiences that I had been telling to myself as my story in a very, very rigid way. And because it's all encoded in the body's memory, and because, as you were saying, you can access surprisingly detailed amounts of information about when you're tiny, even at a cellular level.
Even at being a sperm level, it's like remarkable.
It is remarkable what you can find. And so therefore some of the experiences that cause the patterns go on to cause you a lot of pain in life, and you tend to hold a lot of people responsible for those patterns who it turns out to be couldn't really have been responsible. You were already sensitized because of experiences that nobody is really to blame for. We come into life in a very, very dramatic way, and to get a broader context and a fresh perspective on all of the factors, or at least more of the factors that are at play, the forces of nature, it softens the heart. It makes forgiveness a lot more possible.
A lot more. And when you're able to see what the patterns are and see how you've been very fixed in that very reactive way, because the nervous system is shaped in that moment for a big reaction.
Absolutely.
And when you do the healing and then you have more choices, the brain lays down new pathways.
And you even said in the workshop the new neuron patterns that you could begin to form. And again, at any time in your life, as soon as you begin healing, this is the amazing wonderful thing about the work. There's so many insights to be gained, and such profound healing to move people on from patterns that I see in my clients as well, in my work, where you would think they were entrenched for life, and it isn't the case. It can be changed.
Yeah, the human spirit has amazing potential for healing.
It does.
Incredible.
It does. Yeah.
So Stella, that just brings me to one other thought. Is because you're a practitioner attending the workshop. Yeah. How was that for you? Did it give you some kind of new insight on your work, on approaching people?
Very much so. I mean, there are areas of trauma that I'm familiar with, and yet to understand how deeply trauma can affect somebody, and to see so many ways in which those patterns manifest themselves in terms of physical symptoms. Beautiful, because I can now notice that if I see that or somebody describes suddenly becoming very, very cold, particularly at their extremities, then I'm tuned in now. I'm very much more sensitive, and the whole sensitivity with which you and Julia held people and directed us if they weren't comfortable with eye contact, what that was all about. And it's very easy, I think it's very common for people to dismiss people and judge them if they can't make good eye contact, but now to know that that is a very, very good indicator that there's a trauma history.
Extreme trauma, yeah.
Has turned things around for me as well. It's just a lot of insights, a lot of new information, and I'm hoping that a lot more people are going to have access to the work, because this information is very, very key for trauma at this time in your life.
Absolutely.
To be understood.
Absolutely. And if you are working with people with trauma, then it's important that first of all you begin to understand your own and how you're embodying that.
Absolutely,
and to give yourself more freedom, more healing, so that you're not then driven by your own reactivity and as a therapist within a trauma session.
Absolutely. Training.
Okay, well, bless you. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Pleasure.
Today.
Great pleasure.
Yeah, I'm very honoured.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.